Hey, what up, guys? It is your boy Marcel here, better known as One Arm Wonder. Like last video, I told y'all that I would be bringing in a Paralympian here, and here he is.
Hi everybody, my name is Kirk Black and I was captain of the U.S. Paralympic team in 2018 and just happy to be here with you today, Marcel.
Yeah, it is super exciting for me to do this with him. I've been trying to do this with him for a little while now, ever since I kind of started YouTubing. I was like, maybe I should bring him in. But, I got busy, and then he definitely got busy because he's a Paralympian and God knows what they do. So yeah, I am super excited to do this with him. So y'all obviously know his name, but y'all don't really know anything about him. So could you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I started sports after my injury in about 2007. I had an injury in 2002. Ended up not doing any sports really per se until 2007, where I kind of started doing shot put, discus, and javelin. I went to the veteran wheelchair games. I'm a U.S. veteran, Army veteran, and so I went to the veteran wheelchair games, and there at the veteran wheelchair games, I did those three sports. I placed third in all three of those sports, only because there was three people in each in my classification. To say the least, I was horrible at shot put, discus, and javelin. Ended up trying different sports to see if there was anything else that I might be better in. Archery. I started archery. I didn't think I could do archery. My level of injury is T4, so I'm just right at the level, just right at my chest level. And I didn't think I could shoot archery because if I lift my arms up, of course I have no balance. And by just having a few people teach me some techniques, strapping myself into the chair, trying some different things, I ended up shooting archery pretty decent. I was shooting archery at the U.S. Paralympics for 3 years, and then went snow skiing up in Aspen, Colorado in 2014, I believe it was, and was approached by a coach on one of my days that I wasn't snow skiing. Was approached by one of the coaches up there to try a different sport, and the sport was curling. Curling is compared to like shuffleboard on ice, also compared to it's like chess on ice. I didn't know anything about the sport, to be honest, at all. Thought I'd give it a little try, and went down there, and after 30 minutes or so was invited to a camp out in Lake Placid, New York. So about 2 months later, I went out to Lake Placid, New York. I think it was in September of that same year, and went out there to the 3-day camp and threw some stones for those 3 days. Came home, packed up the wife and the daughter and the house, and we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and I started training with the U.S. Paralympics for those next 4 years, trying to make it to the Olympics.
Wow. Didn't you say that, I remember a while back, I asked you, didn't you play with your basketball for a little while?
I didn't play basketball. I was not quick. I also.
But you tried it though, right?
I've tried it. Oh yeah, I've tried it, but I wouldn't.
That's what I meant.
I wouldn't consider myself a basketball player by any means of the word. So.
Bro, you should start training with me.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. That sucked. It's okay. Alright, so I bet most of y'all are wondering, where did you get this guy from? I swear to God, I didn't just, kidnap somebody on the street and just figure out he was a Paralympian and be like, hey, you want to do an interview? So, my hometown is Clifton, Texas, and I have no idea how Stephen got you to do this, but I used to go to a church named First Baptist Church of Clifton, Texas, and I went to church one day, and he was actually the guest speaker there, and my mom was so excited. She was like, oh my gosh, he's a Paralympian. And once she figured out that he lived in San Antonio, she was like, you've got to talk to this guy. I was like, Mom, stop. I was super embarrassed about it. But I finally went up to him. We had a good conversation, and yeah, so this is actually the first time we've met in San Antonio. Again, because of our different schedules and me with school And so this is spring break now, and I was like, okay, this is like the only time we can meet. Let's go, let's do this. So that's exactly how we met. Pretty simple. Alrighty guys, so before we get further into the interview, I would like to do a thing that I started a few weeks back called the question of the day. So question of the day is pretty simple. All you gotta do is you've got to submit a question to me in the comments, or you can hit me up on Instagram. If you don't know my Instagram, all you have to do is go down to the description and click the link, and you can follow me on Instagram and hit me up with that question. So, usually I'm the one who answers the question, but today, since we have Kirk Black here today, we're gonna ask him a question today. So what I decided to do was, since I gave y'all such a short notice on this video, what I decided to do was post on my story that I'm gonna do this interview with him, and I decided to pick a really good question. Alright, so Kurt, the question of the day is, Kurt, how did you end up in a wheelchair?
Yeah, so, wow, back in 2002, I had been married to my wife for just about a year, and I used to race motocross starting off at a very young age. Started at age like 6 or 7. Raced for years and years and years, and it was one day after church. I was out, just messing around with a buddy and racing and practicing and what have you. And I don't actually remember the injury itself, but apparently came off the bike and I broke my back at T4. So it's been a lot of years ago. I mean, we're talking 17 years now that I've been in the chair. So.
Dang. So, how was it like the recovery? That's my question. Like, how long did it take to recover from that?
For me, my biggest issue was pain. I have really bad chronic pain. And when I first had my injury, they made me wear this, what they called a clamshell. And it's this plastic brace that would go around your back after they did the surgery, so that you wouldn't break anything that they've already just repaired. And so I had to wear that for like 6 months or so, and anytime I got up out of bed. And so for those first 6 months, I just didn't want to get up out of bed, because that brace would rub me right at where I broke my back, right at the level of injury, which would make my pain get really, really bad. And so, and I was living out in the country at the time, so I didn't have really any place I could go. And so I would sit there and I could do two things. I could lay in bed and not hurt, or I could get up out of bed and literally just go into the living room and watch TV and hurt, because I had to wear that clamshell. And so I didn't want to wear it, so I stayed in bed literally for the first 6 months of my injury. And then we moved into San Antonio here, and I literally went from one day of being in bed 24 hours a day to the very next day it was up 14 hours, the next day was 17 hours, and within just literally a very short time after that, within I don't know, a couple month or 2 months, I was going to a community college over on the south side of San Antonio, Palo Alto, and so it's kind of hard to say really when, how long it took me to get going. I would say those 6 months, maybe, I don't want to say it was depression, but I didn't want to get out of bed because it just hurt too much. But once I got into a place where I could do things and really get going, well, then you can kind of tune that pain out and start living life again.
Alrighty guys, so usually I do one question of the day, but this question is pretty popular, so what I'm going to ask you another question. So the question is submitted by Dev Boogie, and he has asked him a really tough question, and I don't know how you're going to answer this one, but how do you feel to be so inspiring to the disabled community?
Wow, Dev Boogie, come on. For me, I'm grateful that somebody's inspired by what I'm doing. I don't think I'm inspiring myself. I'm glad that somebody sees that somebody in the disabled community is doing something that is maybe not your normal thing to be doing, you know, like the Paralympics, and that's inspiring. Um, it's kind of like being called a role model, and I don't want to be called a role model either, you know. If it's something that I'm doing that inspires you, I think that's awesome. Um, but I just an average guy living a life that I've been dealt, and trying to do it the best I can do. You know, I think I'm more inspired by the people who I get to meet each and every day. Um, Marcel's one of those kind of guys is that, um, you know, you born with a disability that most people would, you know, have a hard time with, but he's going to college, he's living on his own, he's playing basketball, he does all these things. To me, that's more inspiring to me than me playing a sport.
That's a really good answer. Alrighty, thank you so much, the Foot Boogie, for submitting that answer to us. If you want to do a question of the day and you want to be on the channel next time, all you have to do is submit a question to me. And this story is going to be coming back on, so maybe next time I'll finish up question of the day and maybe bring up another question that y'all asked for Kirk and answer it on this channel next time. And what was the Paralympics like? I think that's a question that this is the main question.
Yeah, I think most people ask that same question. What was it like? You know, it was for me. You know, I served in the military, and for me growing up and at age, I signed up for the Army at 16 years old. I was a sophomore in high school, and I signed up into what's called the delayed entry program. And as soon as I graduated high school, within a week or so after graduating high school, I was gone. I was gone to the military. There's a pride that one gets when you get to put U.S. Army on one chest, and then your name on the other side, you know, and you're serving your country. And for me, when I got to go to the Paralympics, it was kind of that same thing. It was serving my country.
Yeah,
I kind of felt that same, representing our country. And so you have USA on your back in big letters, and right above it, you know, your last name. And coming into the stadium for opening ceremonies.
I've seen videos of that. It looks so cool.
It's sick. It's sick. The stadium in Pyeongchang, I was in the 2018 Winter Olympics there in Pyeongchang, South Korea. And when you come into the stadium, all the seats in the stadium were lit.
Really?
And they could make, like, they had these little square LED lights on every so often by every seat.
Yeah.
And so when you came in, each light, they could computer control it to make it look like the flag of the United States or the flag of whatever country. And so you would come in and you'd see a banner across the top of the stadium that says United States of America, and then your flag, and the flag is rotating around the stadium, and you're coming into a stadium that is packed. I mean, it's 40,000 people inside this stadium. You're following, literally I'm right behind the United States flag as they're carrying it in. The pride of that, there is no greater country in the world. You know, we have a lot of different ideas about who should be president, or people have different thoughts on how this country should be. But the fact of the matter is that we still live in the greatest country in the world. And there's no greater pride than to be able to come in and to represent that country. And so you come into the stadium and you do that, and then you show up the very next day. The sport I play in is it's not a sport like skiing or something where
Yeah.
you go and ski and 30 seconds later your Olympics is over with. We had 2 games a day for every day of the Olympics. And
how long does each game last? I've never done curling. We should do that.
Yeah,
You should teach me how to do that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So a game truly lasts about 2.5 hours.
Wow, dude.
And so each team has what they call a running clock. It's just like chess. If you ever seen a chess game where one person makes a move and then they hit the clock and then it starts the next person's time. Curling is exactly the same way. We have 38 minutes of what's called running time.
Okay.
If you could be winning the game, you could be winning 10-0, and if your clock hits 0, you lose the game.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So you have to complete the whole game within your total 38 minutes, or you lose.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter how well you're playing, you have to still play in that maintained time. So you're still keeping the the tempo going really well. To say
does it feel rushed whenever you're playing?
You think about it more when of course when it gets towards the end of the game.
Yeah.
The beginning of the game, you're trying to get through the ends faster, so that at the end of the game when it might be more critical, you have a little bit more time left on your clock that you can call timeouts. So you only get 1 timeout per game, and it's for 1 minute, and that's it. So you want to be able to have as much time at the end of your game to be able to sit there and talk with your teammates about what's the best move for us type thing. So
to be honest, I've only played shuffleboard one time, but I don't know. It was interesting. I mean, I lost the game badly, but I don't know. It was really interesting because I did get one piece at the end, but somebody knocked it over. But I mean, that's as much as I can relate to.
Yeah. So curling it's played on a sheet of ice. We're throwing a stone.
Is it the one where they do the brushes?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. The difference between able-bodied curling and wheelchair curling is that we don't sweep.
Yeah. Okay.
So able-bodied curling, when they throw their stone, their sweepers make it extremely accurate, and they can put that stone exactly where they want it. Whereas when I throw it, there's nobody to sweep it, to make it go further, to make it go straighter, or to make it to curl, or whatever. When I throw it, if it ain't perfect,
then
it's not. Yeah, there's nobody to help it. So our sport's definitely a lot harder than the able bodies. But you're throwing a stone that you're throwing it down the ice, about 150 feet down the ice. It's a stone that weighs 42 pounds.
Dang, that's almost as much as I weigh.
42 pounds, and a lot of people don't know, curling is one of the oldest sports known to man. Curling and golf are the two that I've been told are one of the 2 oldest sports known to man, and both of them started in the country of Scotland. Every curling stone that's ever been made in the world is made from one place, and that's an island in Scotland. And the reason for that is because that's the only place in the world where they can get stone that is strong enough that when they hit each other that they don't bust apart.
I mean, that makes sense, but that's also kind of crazy that's only one place. How much do they charge?
So one stone, like an Olympic curling stone, is about $750 per stone.
Yeah, I bet it's expensive.
So you figure you need 16 of them to play a game.
Wait,
16 stones to play a game.
Oh my god.
And then you'll have, like in the Olympics, we had 4 different sheets that were going. So 16 times 4, with 64 stones to play, a game. In every curling club, I always get asked this: do you have your own stone?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is no.
No.
Every place that you go in the world, be it a local curling club in the United States or overseas to the Olympics, every place has their own stones, and the reason for that is because that stone has to be cooled down at least 48 hours before it can ever be set on top of the ice. Because if you took a warm stone and you set it on top of the ice, well, of course it's going to melt the ice.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you never travel around with a 42-pound stone with you.
That's funny. So exactly, what do you have to do, like training wise, to be in the Paralympics or curling?
You know, so I guess every sport's a little bit different. You know, if you're playing basketball, I'm sure your diet comes into play, and that you have to really maintain, you know, a strict diet so you're not getting too heavy.
I think that's for every athlete, to be honest.
It really is not. You'd be surprised. Curling is not so much that way, you know. Curling is a great sport. I love it. Curling is one of the sports that you can start. Like when I train up in Wisconsin, it's not uncommon for me to play a team where they have 4 generations of one family on the ice.
Really?
A kid
so
from,
it's like a family business?
Oh, it's totally. You have a kid that's starting out that's 5 or 6 years old and have his great grandpa in there that is in his 90s. So it's a sport you can play your whole life. You don't have to be super strong to play the sport. Certain positions require more strength than others, but
their positions.
Yes, so you have 4 different people that make up a team.
Okay.
You have a lead, then your second, then you have a vice skip, and then a skip. And a skip is like the captain of the team. Okay.
Were you the skip?
I was the skip of the team.
Whoop whoop. All right.
Yeah. The skip is also the person who is the strategist of the team. Normally, he's the one that's figuring out not only the shot that we're fixing to make, but it's also what's going to happen if we make this shot. What are they going to do? And so that's how they compare it to chess. You're not just thinking about this shot or this move, but you're thinking about several moves ahead as well. How are you going to score multiple points in an end?
To be honest, if we ever played, I would just be thinking about just chunking the thing. And that's all I was thinking. Maybe get it down there.
Yeah, no. So it's, you know, but training wise, I guess, you know, when I was leading all 4 of those years that I was training for the Paralympics, I trained 7 days a week.
Really? That's a full-time job, right?
It's a full-time job. It really is. I would train at least 2 hours a day minimum, and that was throwing stones. So I'd go down to my local club that I was training out of, which is out of Madison, Wisconsin, and I would throw stones at a minimum of 2 hours a day. There was days that we'd get to the club. If we're training as a team, we'd get to the club and we'd be there at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and maybe not even get off the ice until midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So depending on who was the coach out on the ice and what we were doing, some days were extremely long. Some days were, 2 hours for me would fly by. There was no time at all. It didn't seem like any much time at all. But it was 7 days a week. And so I would go into a club and I would practice for 2 hours, and then I might come off for 15 minutes into a room, what they call the warm room, which is just normal, where people could sit there and watch the game. And then literally, 15, 20 minutes later, go back out on the ice again, and then I'd be playing my league games, sometimes 1, 2 games a night, sometimes 3 games in a night. So a game 2 hours, a minimum of 2 hours, so another 6 hours of games in a night sometimes.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
So lots of practice, and trying to put yourself in a thought process of when you're training to really make it mean something. I wasn't there at the club just throwing stones just to throw a stone.
Yeah.
You think of it as, I'm throwing this stone. This is the last stone of the game. It's like playing baseball. This is for the World Series. On the last 2 strikes, 3 balls and 2 strikes and 2 outs, and if I don't hit this home run, we lose the game.
Yeah, that's what I think about whenever I play basketball, especially like at the very end, whenever like free throws and stuff is like, this could, and this like the end, and it's like the crowd goes wild. I'm super dramatic whenever I practice, like I don't know.
You gotta be though,
Yeah.
because if you're not, you're just throwing a basket. You're shooting a basketball, or you're throwing a stone.
Yeah, I think it makes it a lot more fun, and if you kind of put the pressure on yourself, then whenever you go to the game, it's not as much pressure because you're kind of, you're kind of at the mentality of, this does really count, and, so I think it's easier to get into that mentality if you practice like that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you got to do it. You got to do it.
So for all the future Paralympians out there, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is find a sport that you love. Mm-hmm. If you get into a sport that you just are there because you're good at it, but you don't enjoy it, it's not worth it. Then training becomes that. It becomes training.
Yeah.
It becomes a headache. It becomes something you don't want to do. If you're in a sport that you don't like, or maybe you're in a sport that you're not very good at, you like it, but you're not very good at it, maybe it's time to try another sport. Like I said, I tried so many sports before I finally found curling. I started off with the shot put, discus, and javelin. I did archery. I did snow skiing. I did baseball or softball.
Yeah.
I did basketball. I even did sled hockey on a gym floor. They had these practice carts that we could do on a gym floor. So I've tried all kinds of things, canoeing, you name it. But you try something until you find it, and it's something that sticks and that you love. And so that's what it's about, is finding something that you enjoy to do and what you love.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of wheelchair users don't know that there are so many different sports that you could try and do. I think a lot of people know like the bigger ones like wheelchair basketball, but it's mind-blowing how advanced wheelchair sports have become and how many they now have for wheelchair users these days. So
there's every sport that's out there for able-bodied, there is for wheelchair users.
Yeah,
there really is. It might be modified a little bit one way or the other, but it's there. I mean, so we can all enjoy doing the same things that we did before. That's one of the big things that I enjoyed about curling is that I could be out there practicing. In my club alone, there was 5 of us that went to the Olympics or the Paralympics. There was 3 people from my club that went to the Olympics as curlers, and 2 of us that went to the Paralympics as curlers. But I could be out on a sheet of ice and I could be playing a kid that was 6 or 7 years old, or I could be out there playing against an Olympian, and I could compete at the same level as he could. When I throw my stone, I was just as good as he was throwing his stone.
Wow.
So that's what I enjoyed about that sport is that even though I'm doing it in a wheelchair, I can compete still at the same level as these guys are that are able-bodied. So
yeah, I think that's a good mindset to do.
Find something you love.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. So that is all for the interview. But before we close out, I would like to give a shout out to recognition of the fans in the stands out there. But this time, again, we're gonna do it a little differently because we have Kirk here. So instead of me picking them, I would like Kirk here to pick the shout out of the day today. Actually, we're gonna do 2.
All right. So for me, anybody that supports people that are disabled are my heroes, and 2 of them that stuck out to me that support Marcel is definitely Michael Ryan. So a shout out to you, Michael Ryan, and another one to Def Boogie. Shout out to you, Def Boogie. Keep watching this guy. This guy's a good man.
All right, thank you so much for coming.
Right on. Thank you, sir.
All right, that was a great interview.